Good morning, brethren. Happy Wednesday. I hope you are blessed this morning and we are ready to jump in and continue with our study on lesson 18 about the Old Covenant. And this Wednesday we are talking about a lost generation. And a lost generation, just to get a bit of context on it, is really talking about what happened in the wilderness when the children of Israel were just about to get into Canaan, and the spies, the 12 spies, were sent out to go and spy the place and see how it was. And they came back after 40 days with a bad report. At least 10 of them came with a bad report, except for the two people, Caleb and Joshua. And so the people were convinced that God was not with them, and they wanted to go back, and they wanted to go back to Egypt. And so what happened is God turned them around, and they just stayed around the wilderness for the next 40 years. So in those 40 years, let's see what happened, because the question is, what happened to the vast majority of the nation of Israel because they failed to understand their inability to save themselves and keep the law perfectly without divine aid? And so what happened is, majority of them, they died in the wilderness of Sinai. So not one of those people who were adults at that time survived. Their children went into Canaan, but except for Joshua and Caleb, the rest of them died in the wilderness. And this is because they thought they didn't need God anymore, and they could do this on their own. They conveniently forgot that God had taken them from Egypt and had brought them thus far, and they were just very close to Canaan. They could literally see it, but because of their unbelief, they had to spend some 40 years in the wilderness, and they all died. So the question again is, was the problem with God or with these people, or with the people in this old covenant? That's the question. Of course, it was the people, because the people, God did everything to save the people, but they were just doing their own thing and seeking their own righteousness. In fact, in the passage here, it's mentioning a natural Christian. People may think that because we just call ourselves Christians because of the association we have with God. It says this deceptive idea has served many as a garment of self-righteousness. When you say you're a Christian and don't do anything that God has asked, that's self-righteousness. And calling ourselves a natural Christian, there's nobody like a natural Christian. Christ has to work in our hearts to mold us and to change us. And we need his righteousness, not our own righteousness. And so the last paragraph here tells us, what is it that constitutes the wretchedness, the nakedness of those who feel rich and increased with goods? It is the want of the righteousness of Christ. In their own righteousness, they are represented as clothed with filthy rags, and yet in this condition they flatter themselves that they are clothed upon with Christ's righteousness. Could deception be greater? As is represented by the prophet, they may be crying, the temple of the Lord are we, while their hearts are filled with unholy traffic and unrighteous barter. So that's a very good warning for us as well, to realize that just because we are using the name of God and saying praise God and saying the temple of the Lord are we, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have the righteousness of Christ. We really have to desire to be covered by his righteousness. We need to be obedient, not just say that we are obedient. And we have to have belief, because Israelites were mostly misled by their own unbelief and distrust of God, not having any faith. And if we don't have faith, then how can we be saved? So while we meditate on those words, we remember that a whole generation was lost because of that. And so it's something to really think about, and to think about our relationship with God, and to see if the righteousness that we have right now is the righteousness of Christ or our own righteousness. So I pray that you have a blessed day and you meditate on these words, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow to finish up this study on the Old Covenant. So have a blessed day.